Hey guys, Mr. V over here doing a book review today for Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. Before I get into my book review, I want you guys to know that I try to do a spoiler-free book review, so if you see me looking down, I just have notes, so I try not to give any spoilers away. Another thing you guys should know is that there is some controversy surrounding this book. So this takes place in the United States, but it takes place in the 1860s in the South, in Georgia. And it takes place before, it starts before the American Civil War, and it goes through the American Civil War and the Reconstruction era. And that the main characters, they own slaves, and they use different terminologies from the 1860s, which are very racist. And there's a lot of racist and sexist things that are in this book, because she is trying to make you feel like you are in the 1860s. And the 1860s South, I should say, as well. And when she does that, it makes it feel real, but you guys should be aware of that before considering this book. Because I don't want you to be surprised. As I saw some reviews online were surprised. So I just want you to be aware of that. Another thing I would suggest before considering the book is I would suggest knowing a little bit about the American Civil War. You want to know more than just the South loses. You want to know about some of the battles and what happened to the South. And again, more than they just lost the war. Because you really want to know how bitter the South was after losing the war and how angry they were after the war, because it plays a role in the storylines, and you definitely want to know that going into the book, so again you aren't shocked during the book. So anyway, let's get into the book review for Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. The main premise for this book is very hard to say, but the main premise is basically you follow a main character, Scarlett O'Hara, and her trying to live through the American Civil War and try to basically survive and get money and feed the family, all that, trying to survive through the Civil War, and then also her quest for love as well. And that's very, very brief, but that's about as far as I can go, because there are so many storylines in this book. I mean, first of all, you see how thick the book is. It's a humongous book, but there are so many storylines, and while it is a very seemingly simple storyline that I just told you, it is so complex. And that's why I can't go in depth, because it just would take, the review would take way too long if I did that. But this is basically a book, this is almost like a study of humans and a story of love. But it's a very complex story of love. It's not just simple story. Because as I said, there's so many different storylines. You're not, of course, the main character is Scarlett, but you're following so many different people, and there's so many different stories of love in this. And there are so many different storylines that it goes from love to war, to slavery, to family issues. There are so many different things and many different dramas, and you never know where the book is going. And I mean in a good way, as I'll talk about in just a bit. But as I said, there are too many stories to talk about very specifics. So in this review, I'm going to talk about the overall themes that are covered in the book. Because again, there are so many different storylines in this. So that's why I'm going to cover the overall themes. But it's a very, very interesting and just great book, because you get to see, like I said, it's almost like a study of humans, but you see them in all different types of situations and relationships. Basically, you see every type of relationship in this book. You see family, I'm talking about brothers, sisters, cousins, parents, sons or daughters. But then you also see marriage from both sides, both sexes. You see friendships, you see enemies, neighbors, slaves, widows, young, middle-aged, old. You see all different types of relationships in this. You see basically, I said, every type of relationship you can think of. And that's, just a brief example. In this book, there are people who start out as enemy and then become friends. Or there's people who become friends and then become enemies later. Or friends who use each other, and that's why they become enemies later. And I said, there are so many different stories in this, to where it is phenomenal how much she did in this book. Because not only do you see all the different types of relationships, but you basically see every different type of emotion, which is really cool. You see all different types of love, from spouses to friends to family, but you also see every type of emotion in terms of happiness, anger, sadness, jealousy, selfishness, greed, deception, bitterness, embarrassment. These are just a few of the things I've written down, but you can see how many different types of emotions you go through. And I told you already, there's many different characters, so you get many different points of view. You already heard like the different types of relationships she goes through. But even just the story of love, it is just phenomenal, the amount she covers, because it's like everyday life, how like some people want love, they're searching for love, and then other people have love, and other people lose love, or they fall out of love, and there's just so many different situations. Again, it's like everyday life, and that's what was very, very interesting. And what's cool is that she gives you the true story of love, in that, you know, how much jealousy can be involved in love. Because we always think of love, or when you see these love stories, sometimes you just think of it as super easy. They meet and then they fall in love and it's great. And that can happen sometimes. But sometimes there is also the story of, like I said, like true love, where then there's like, it's not easy to get the love. First of all, you want to fall in love, or you want to get the person you love, and maybe you can't get the love, but then also maybe someone else picks him up, or the other friends become jealous when you get the love. And there's just so much jealousy that can go on when you're trying to even find your love. And it's just, again, it is very interesting. And she just shows how it's not easy and the amount of drama that it can create. And again, that I do feel that is like the true story of love. And she just does like an amazing job, like the study of humans and how they act and what they do. But more than just the story that I already talked about in terms of love and like the different types of relationships you deal with, this book covers a lot about the war. As I said, it starts before the American Civil War and goes through the American Civil War. So this is also a story of war in terms of the effects it has on the countries and the towns, or, you know, people who go to war, the families who knew someone that went to war, or people who got injured and come back, some of the survivors, some of the people who get killed. And there's just so many different things, but also how both sides act to the war. How was the North acting and how was the South acting, and how both acted after the war. So there's a study of war as well, and it's just like a story of war. Sorry, not a study of war, the story of war. Because it takes place in the South during the American Civil War, and the South loses. You know, if you guys know history, American history, you guys know the South loses. But in the South, you see how people go from like very proud about fighting, then they become angry, and then they become like dejected and sad, and how bitter then they can become before it finally goes to acceptance. But even after they accept, there is still that lingering bitterness that you can see among the characters. And that's why I say you want to know about the American Civil War a little bit, and you want to know about the South and how they didn't just lose the war simply. They became very bitter and very angry after they lost the war. So it wasn't easy as in they lose the war and life goes on. It wasn't that easy. And you can see that in the characters here. But you can see, just based off what I'm saying, a lot happens at like every stage of the book. Again, look at this. This is a humongous book. This is a huge book. It's about 1,000 pages. So this is a very, very long book. But what is amazing is that it is not the same story throughout the book. In terms of, yes, you are following the main character, but it is not like the main character is just like trying to fall in love and then she finds love and it's just the same thing throughout the whole book. It is not that at all. The characters, they develop and they change, but there's new characters introduced, and there's always different types of dramas. It's not the same one going over and over. There's different types, and it's all these different things. And that's why I said there were so many different storylines in here, yet I never felt overwhelmed. And that was amazing. But I think it was due to her amazing writing, because she just weaved these stories so perfectly. And I just want to clarify, you're not dealing with like 20 stories at once. But I'm just saying how she changes the characters and new drama arises and so many different storylines come in different plays. And just her amazing writing style, just, you know, she just brought you into their world. She did a great job of making you feel like you are really there. Not only in that town, but like you can see the emotions on the characters unfolding. Like you really feel like you are there while you're reading. And when I was reading it, I felt like every type of emotion while reading, to where like you really feel it and it makes you think a lot. You know, I felt anger towards characters, or sadness for characters, or happiness for characters. I would shake my head at times when people were jerks. There was times that I would laugh at what the characters did or what they said, and that's rare for me to laugh when I'm reading a book. And it was just so amazing that I had to take a step back and just like shocked how this book could make you feel like so many different emotions, and how you can get so angry at a character, and how you can get, you know, feel so bad for certain characters. And it was so amazing when reading this book. The only bad thing I would say about this book was that there are a lot of characters throughout the whole story. It's a long book, as you saw, but there's even a lot in chapter 1, so don't get turned off if you see a lot of characters. Just, kind of power through it, because while there are only a few main characters, there are a lot of side characters or minor characters. So just prepare for that. That was one of the only things I didn't like about the book. And the other thing is just prepare also that the chapters are rather long. So again, just prepare for that as well. But while the chapters are longer, it is a very entertaining, so it's not like you never felt the chapters were that long. You just want to prepare that it's not easy to sit down and read 15 minutes. Normally I read for over an hour before I finish different things. So you just want to be prepared for that, and that's all. But overall, I just felt this was an amazing book. I just had so much fun with this book because you get drawn into their world and you feel so many emotions when reading this book. And it was truly like you just had a true experience when reading this book. So, this is an amazing, amazing book. But let me give it my official rating right now. So I always rate my book on a scale of 0 to 10. A 0 is an awful book that you never want to read. A 5 is an average, and a 10 is a phenomenal book that if I put it anywhere near 10, you should put that on your reading list because I'm a very tough critic. And a 5's average, and it's hard to move up even 1 point in my rating system. So again, a 5 being average, I would rate Gone with the Wind a 10. Which is very, very rare for me. I have only rated a few books a 10. And those who have seen my other reviews, you'll see that I don't rate books that highly too easily. But I'm going to rate this book a 10 because this was just a true epic experience when reading it. Despite it being a very long book, I never wanted it to end. I wanted it to keep going. I wanted to see the drama. And the author just does such an amazing job at doing that. And again, I just had such an amazing experience reading the book with all the different emotions and dramas and everything going on that it was just such a fun and interesting read, I should say. But if you guys have any comments or questions, please post it in the comment section below because I love hearing your opinions on things. And if you guys want to see more book reviews like the one you just saw, please hit the subscribe button as I always upload multiple different types of book reviews. But thank you for watching my book review today. This is Mr. V. Go enjoy reading.